As a Louisianian, the Gulf means a great deal to me. Louisiana is known as a sportsman's paradise. Some of the greatest memories I have growing up is in the coastal marshes, fishing and hunting with my father and my children.
The Florida coastline is really a remarkable one. So the variety of having beautiful white beaches, but also the opportunity to hop into a canoe, paddle a little ways and see manatees or have dolphins spending the day with you.
There are few places where wildlife, people, and natural habitats are woven as tightly together as they are along the Gulf Coast.
It's a terribly important ecosystem to our country. Almost all trade coming out of the breadbasket of America comes through the Mississippi River, which flows right through Louisiana.
Our shrimp fishery, our oyster fishery, aquaculture is happening. All of our fisheries start in these coastal areas.
The biggest challenge facing the coastline are hurricanes and sea level rising.
Unfortunately, coastal Louisiana is eroding away, and it's very important that we rebuild coastal land not only for the sportsmen, but for industry.
We bring people in here to see it and touch it and feel it and smell it and taste it, because that's the only way to truly understand where we are and how bountiful it is, but how fragile it is as well.
The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation was founded in 1984 as a nonpartisan body that is interested in one thing, and that is conservation and getting dollars on the ground. In fact, over 96% of every dollar given to NFWF gets on the ground in conservation in all 50 states to more than 16,500 projects.
National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is so important because it actually brings people together from industry, from communities, from other ways of life, brings everyone together for a common goal.
The Sea Turtle Conservancy has been working with NFWF for over 10 years now on many different types of projects. They take seriously the needs of the species that they're working on, and they really take time to develop strategies for conservation that work.
I'll never forget when I woke up morning in 2010 and heard about a massive explosion that killed 11 men. It's not the first time oil had been spilled in the Gulf of Mexico, but I don't think anyone at that moment in time would have believed that over the course of the next 3 months, 130 million gallons of crude oil was going to be spilled into the Gulf of Mexico.
People's livelihoods were immediately threatened. The tourism stopped, the fishing stopped. It remained an economic disaster for some time to come.
As time rolled on and this spill didn't look like it was going to be abated immediately, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation went to work with state agencies and governments and private industry to find ways to help prevent further destruction of wildlife.
The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation has the ability to move like lightning, much faster than the private sector and faster than a governmental agency.
One of the principles of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is partnership building. We were able to cobble together the people and the initial funds to actually get work started really within a very short time frame after the spill.
An entire nesting class of turtles from 2010 on the Gulf Coast had to be relocated to the Atlantic in an unprecedented rescue effort. It was amazing to see National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Sea Turtle Conservancy, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the state of Florida, and FedEx come together, government, private, nonprofit, to rescue the turtles that otherwise would have died as soon as they swam out into those oily waters.
In May of 2013, the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund was established as a result of a decree between the Department of Justice and BP and Transocean. Almost immediately, NFWF started working with government and state agencies to deploy the funds.
It's great, and thank you, Governor.
I'm most proud of the speed and the consciousness of with which we have put the money back on the ground. Coastal Louisiana is going to depend on the success of these projects that we are undertaking. The reconstruction of Barrier Island, the diversion of Mississippi River sediment back into the coastlands to rebuild the marshes.
On a daily basis, we are the premier oil and gas service base for the entire Gulf of Mexico. Nearly 20% of the nation's oil supply. We're standing on the Caminada Headland. It's a beautiful place that is really the protection between Port Fourchon and the marsh to the north of it and the Gulf of Mexico. So this project is 14 miles long and 1,200 feet wide from Gulf to back marsh. And they've rebuilt the beach as well as an elevated dune. And the only reason why we're standing here today and it hadn't eroded away is because of the funds that National Fish and Wildlife Foundation has put in.
What we're doing is trying to reestablish a system which will begin to mimic what was there. And if there's any way to begin to reestablish where we are and what we're doing, that river is the center point from which we must begin.
The Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund has helped the coast of Alabama in that we've been able to really look at the coast as a whole. We have landscape scale restoration happening that we never thought were going to be possible in the past. We have coastal communities that are looking at becoming more resilient, building areas that are going to make their coast much more protected. We have the same types of projects, acquisitions, and restorations happening in Mississippi and Alabama, Texas, and in Florida. If you roll that up, that's what it takes to restore the Gulf.
In the 5 years since its creation, the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund has enabled government leaders, agencies, conservation organizations, and volunteers to restore habitats and wildlife populations impacted by the spill.
To sit right up behind a nesting turtle and watch her lay her eggs in the sand. It is a life-changing experience to watch a child who is looking at this animal that, for all practical purposes, is a living dinosaur. You can see the amazement in their eyes.
Conservation doesn't just mean saving birds and fish. It means family. I'm born and raised in Louisiana, and when I leave this earth, I want to make sure that coastal Louisiana is building again.
Results from the first 5 years of the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund will guide conservation investments in the region for years to come, shaping a lasting legacy of conservation across the Gulf of Mexico.